Today's I can is I can calculate the tip or tax when working with percents. And so we're going to cover real life situations of how to figure out how much tip you should give a waitress or someone who served you, or how much tax there's going to be on a bill. So if I was going to survey the class just to get a rough estimate, I'd ask how many of you have ever ate at a restaurant and had to add a tip to your payment. When you go to a school dance and you go out for dinner as a group, you have to pay for your dinner and you usually leave a tip. And so hypothetically, if there were 10 kids in the class, we'll say that 7 of them have had to add a tip to their dinner bill and 3 of them have not. So 70% of our class has paid for dinner using a tip, and 30% have not had this experience. Remember, since we are working with the percents, figure things out. And so if I eat at a restaurant, I typically take, for figuring out how much I tip, it depends on my bill. And so this can varies with the bill. However, when I decide how much to leave the waitress, I know that tax is about 5%, and I like to leave a 20% tip. And so what I do is I take my tax, because it's 5%, multiply it by 4, and that's how much I tip. And it varies on how good the service was and stuff like that too. Our first story problem says that last night I got my hair cut. My bill came to a total of $14.95, and I give the stylist a 17% tip. How much did I pay in total? When figuring out how to add a tip onto your bill, you take your bill total, you add the tip amount that you're going to give in dollars, and then that's going to equal your total payment. And the tip amount in dollars is going to be using what we've learned in the last 2 lessons about how to figure that out. So when setting up my equation, my bill total came to $14.95. And to that, I need to add my tip amount in dollars. And I'm going to set up a percent equation in order to solve that. So I take my percent I want to tip in decimal form, so 0.17, times the whole of my bill, $14.95, and that's going to give me the part extra that I owe. And then this is going to equal how much I owe the lady for cutting my hair. So it comes down to $14.95 plus a $2.54 tip. And that is going to equal, plus $2.54, a total of $17.49. And that is how much I'll pay for my haircut. Our second story problem says that Chrissy is a waitress at Applebee's. She told me that her best tip all night was $15 on a bill that was a total of $56.41. What percent tip did they leave Chrissy? And so remember, when we set up this equation, we take our bill total plus the percent equation to figure out our tip. And remember, percent equation is going to be our percentage in the decimal form times the bill total. And that is going to equal the final payment. And we are actually, this time, finding out the percent tip that was left behind. So we need to plug things in and figure out how to solve for what's left. So her bill total was $56.41 plus the tip, which we have an unknown percent, so I'm going to call that X, times the bill total of $56.41, Because remember, this is our percent equation, which we learned about previously. And that's going to equal her final payment, which was the bill total of $56.41 plus the $15 tip that they left. You could also set this up as simply the tip, which would be our unknown percentage times bill total of $56.41 equals the $15 tip. Both are correct ways of solving the problem. When solving the second equation, all we have to do is divide by $56.41 to both sides to solve. And in doing so, you end up with x equals 0.2659. However, remember, it's asking for a percent that they left. And this is not a percent. But in order to get to the percent, we multiply by 100, like we've talked about. And we end up with that they left a 26.59% tip, which is actually a pretty high tip. Now that we've talked about how to tip and figure that out, we're going to now talk about tax. And tax is on almost every item you buy. So in society, goods and services, for the most part, are taxed by the government. There's 3 things that are important when talking about tax that you should know. First is, what percentage of tax is charged in Waukesha County? Since we all live in Waukesha County, we should know what tax rate we're paying on items. When I went on to Google, I figured it out, and Waukesha County charges a 5.1% tax rate on goods and services. The state of Wisconsin charges 5%, and other places in the state charge more than 5.1%. It all depends on what the county needs. The second question is, what are taxes used for? If you're going to pay taxes, you should know what they go to. Some things that they're used for are building better roads. A lot of tax money goes to schools or parks or other government-funded areas. And those are just a few of the many, many examples. And then also things to know are, what are some examples of untaxed items? And if you go to the grocery store ever, you'll notice that usually your tax is pretty low. And that's because most food is untaxed. However, not all food. It depends on the type of quality of food, I would say, maybe. Like candy is taxed because you don't really need to eat candy. But vegetables, untaxed because they're good for you. And then other examples of untaxed items or places are if you're nonprofit. There you go. If you're a nonprofit organization, you are untaxed, and also farms are tax exempt also on certain items that they buy. Our first tax question today says that at Target the other day, since I love Target, I bought a pair of shoes for $29.99, laundry detergent for $8.98, and trail mix for $3.44 because I was hungry. Including tax, what was my total bill? So when figuring out the tax on everything, what you do is you add up all your total, so you add prices up, and then you take that and you multiply all your prices added together times the tax rate, which in Waukesha County is 5.1%. So as a decimal, remember, 0.051 is our tax rate in Waukesha County. And then we would add the tax amount to the total bill to find how much we would have to pay. So, starting with adding up our prices, we have $29.99 plus $8.98 plus $3.44. And that equals $42.41. So that is our total bill. So we have the total bill of $42.41. And now we also have to add our amount of tax. So we have to take our bill of $42.41 times 0.051%. To continue solving, I then have $42.41 for my total bill, plus my tax ends up being $2.16, so $2.16, and altogether we have a total bill of $44.57. Our final story problem is the following. Matt went out for dinner the other night, and this was his bill. However, the restaurant forgot to add the tax on his bill. So if he was eating in Waukesha County, what would his tax be? And the beauty is on this bill, they already gave us a subtotal, which is all his dinner prices added together for us. So they already did part of our work. So to find tax, remember, we take our subtotal, or all our prices added together, which is $155.80, and we multiply that by the tax rate of the county, which is 5.1%, or 0.051, since we have to work with it in decimal form. Altogether, that equals $7.95 worth of tax. So that would be added onto his bill. Our next question also asks us, what would his total be if he added an 18% tip? And when you find out your tip, when figuring out how much tip to leave, you can either decide to leave your tip based off of your bill's subtotal or off of the overall total, which would include your tax. And in this case, to make our life a little easier, we're going to leave it just off of the subtotal amount since it's already figured out for us. So we want to figure out an 18% tip off of our $155.80 bill. And to figure out the tip, remember, we just take the total times the percentage that we want. This is a percent equation like we've been doing in the past. When solving, we end up with a $28.04 tip.